Straight ahead on Law&Crime Daily, the deadly Uvalde school shooting.
Thoughts and prayers are wonderful and important, but they are not enough. And actions speak louder than words, and we must take action.
Why officials say emergency responders didn't do enough. Plus, disgraced comedian Bill Cosby is found liable in a decades-old sexual assault case.
This is a great victory, not only for our client, but for other persons who allege they are victims of child sexual abuse.
And the Pike County Massacre.
When Jake came in and he sat down with us and he told us what happened, it absolutely erased the whodunit.
What key witness could testify when George Wagner IV stands trial for murder? But first, Justin Ross Harris's murder conviction is overturned for the 2014 death of his toddler son, Cooper. Law&Crime Daily covering court cases from coast to coast. Welcome everyone to Law&Crime Daily. I'm your host, Brian Buckmire. A monumental ruling by the Georgia State Supreme Court as the murder conviction of Justin Ross Harris is overturned. Back in 2016, Harris was convicted in the 2014 murder of his 22-month-old son, Cooper. Harris told officials he forgot to drop Cooper off at daycare before driving to work. After that, he left Cooper in the back seat of the vehicle for about 7 hours in the 80-degree heat of Atlanta, Georgia. The boy later died. Harris was sentenced to life in prison plus an extra 32 years when he was found guilty on 8 charges. Harris appealed his conviction of murder and first-degree child cruelty earlier this year. On Wednesday, the Georgia State Supreme Court overturned Harris's murder conviction, saying jurors were shown a, quote, extensive amount of improperly admitted evidence. At the time of the trial, Harris was also convicted of sex crimes involving a then 16-year-old girl. Prosecutors used that information to argue Harris intentionally killed Cooper to be free of his child. In its order, the Georgia Supreme Court ruled there is no relevant connection between Harris's sex crimes and a motive to murder his son. While Harris's murder conviction was overturned, the court upheld his sex crimes conviction. Joining us today is co-host Terri Austin and criminal defense attorney Karen Nance. Karen, prosecutors convincingly painted Justin Ross Harris as a sexual predator, but the Supreme Court slapped that down, saying that doesn't mean he's a murderer. Is there truth behind that logic?
I think with this particular case, Brian, there is truth behind it because we're talking about different offenses that this particular person has committed. Clearly, he is guilty. He was found guilty of both. But the court set this aside because you need separate evidence. You need to have independent evidence that's not related to the sexual crimes that he committed. So he has to have a new trial so that that information will be handled separately and it's been addressed separately. So I think in this case, the court was correct in setting aside the verdict with regard to the murder.
Yeah, both horrible crimes, but simply being a sexual predator doesn't necessarily make you a murderer. Well, Terri, so what happens now? Does Justin Ross Harris receive a new trial for the alleged murder of his son?
So that's exactly what's going to happen, Brian. He's going to get a new trial for that murder conviction. But as far as those sexual crimes are concerned, he's going to keep that conviction and stay in jail. In fact, he didn't even appeal that conviction. But the DA has already stated that they plan to file a motion to reconsider. I'm assuming if they do that, they are going to lose that motion. Most of the motions that are made for reconsiderations are denied because you're going before the same judge. And if that's the case, then he'll go back, he'll get a new trial, it'll be a new jury, it'll be new evidence, maybe some of the same evidence, and it starts all over again.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the motive will be now if it's not the fact that he's trying to get away from his family, and will that motive hold up in front of a jury of his peers? We'll obviously continue to follow that case with new developments. And for the first time, the families of Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie face off in court ahead of a possible civil trial. Gabby Petito made national headlines last fall after she was reported missing in early September. Her family told officials she had been on a cross-country road trip with her fiancé, Brian Laundrie. Petito's body was later found in Grand Teton National Park. Her cause of death was ruled to be strangulation. After a weeks-long manhunt, Laundrie's remains were discovered in a Florida reserve. Authorities determined he died by suicide. Along with his remains, investigators found a written confession where Laundrie admitted to killing Petito. Months later, Petito's parents filed a civil suit against Chris and Roberta Laundrie, arguing Brian Laundrie told his parents about Petito's murder in late August of last year, and that they later helped conceal his location before he went missing. On the next episode of Law and Crime Daily, we'll take a closer look at Wednesday's motion hearing. And in California, the Justice Department announced it is dropping some fraud charges against disgraced attorney Michael Avenatti. This comes after he agreed to plead guilty to several charges last week. The already incarcerated lawyer was accused of swindling clients out of millions of dollars in settlement funds and obstructing the IRS as it attempted to collect millions in unpaid payroll taxes from a company Avenatti operated. The U.S. Attorney's Office in California says it won't move forward with the 31 counts of wire fraud, bank fraud, and tax-related charges. The 51-year-old is already serving 5 years in prison for 2 other convictions, including stealing book proceeds from his former client Stormy Daniels, as she went public about a hush money scheme surrounding an alleged affair with former President Donald Trump. He's also serving time for trying to extort athletic company Nike. Avenatti is scheduled to be sentenced in September. He faces a maximum of 83 years in prison, but his sentence will likely be much shorter. Still ahead on Law and Crime Daily, disgraced comedian Bill Cosby is found liable in a civil sexual assault case. But first, we head to Pike County, Ohio, where a member of the Wagner family will soon stand trial for murder. Welcome back. An Ohio judge rules Jake Wagner can testify against his brother at George Wagner IV's upcoming trial. Both Wagners and their parents are charged in the so-called Pike County Massacre. It happened in the remote Ohio County in 2016 when 8 members of the Rodian family, 7 adults and 1 teenager were found shot and killed. 3 children at the murder scene were left alive. Years later, members of the Wagner family were arrested in connection to the massacre. Mother Angela Wagner, father George Billy Wagner, and sons Edward Jake Wagner and George Wagner IV were charged with the murders. Investigators say Jake Wagner shared custody of his daughter with Hannah Rogan. Investigators say that dispute led to the murder. Last year, Jake and Angela Wagner admitted to the crime, agreeing to testify against Billy and George IV. Prosecutors agree that if Jake testifies truthfully, the death penalty for his family members will be taken off the table. At a hearing on Tuesday, George Wagner IV's attorney argued that Jake Wagner's testimony should be suppressed. At George's coming trial, after the motion, the prosecution countered.
The state gets to determine the value of his testimony once he testifies. It's our position that this is such a coercive plea agreement that it violates due process, not only under the U.S. Constitution, but the Ohio Constitution as well.
The defendant wants this court and the community to believe that the state's entire case hinges on Jake Wagner, and that's just not the truth. Look, Your Honor, the state had a powerful and strong case against the Wagner clan, both collectively and individually, before this case was even indicted, well before we got to this point. Well before Jake and Angela decided to cooperate and give us their testimony.
In the end, a judge denied the defense's motion to suppress Jake Wagner's testimony. George Wagner IV's trial is set to begin in August. Terri, do you think the judge made the right ruling in letting Wagner's brother testify? Were there arguments that you think the defense should have made?
You know, I definitely think the judge made the right decision here. I believe that in exchange for this guilty plea and testifying, Jake Wagner is basically saying, look, I'm not going to spend the rest of my life in prison, and I am negotiating for the rest of the family not to spend the rest of their life in prison. I don't think there was any violation of due process. That's what the defense was trying to argue, because there is an ability to cross-examine. And also, I think the defense had another good argument about the fact that he is not testifying on information that alone will convict him. There's other information that will convict him. So I think the other thing he could have argued is that, listen, no one can due consideration for someone else. And maybe that argument might have won, but I definitely think it was the right decision.
Yeah. Karen, maybe I'm projecting as a defense attorney, but if I hear, and I'm representing George Wagner's situation, that his brother's going to testify, I'm going to look to my client and be like, maybe we should take a plea. So do you think we're on the road to a trial or a plea now that brother's going to testify against brother?
I think it's a time for his counsel to have a serious conversation with him. We're talking about his mother, Angela, and his younger brother, Jake, prepared to testify against him to save themselves, basically, for the offer of a better deal. So I think that gives reason to pause, and he has to determine whether it's worth taking the risk. Is it worth making this gamble and going forward? He already has his family members who are going to testify against him. I don't see the benefit in moving forward, and I don't know if there's another offer on the table for him. But I think that we have him and his father's case still pending, so it'll be interesting to see how he would proceed. But I think that he should cut his losses and plead at this point.
Yeah, often the last person to turn on the group is the one who gets the worst offer. We'll see how this plays out. Maybe the offer is so bad, he has to go to trial. We don't know. We'll keep an update on that. And in Florida, the Candy the Dog civil trial is set to resume on Thursday after multiple jurors tested positive for COVID-19. The case stems from an incident in 2016 when defendant Zachary Dieterle shot and killed Candy, a terrier mix. The lawsuit was brought on by Rodney Jacobson, Candy's owner, and a witness to the shooting. Dieterle claims the dog was in an attack stance when he shot her. Local officials say Dieterle was not charged because he had a permit to carry the weapon and feared for his life, and that he was within his rights to use deadly force because he feared that he would die. Jacobson says Candy had no history of aggression. He says the ultimate goal of the trial is for the Sarasota Sheriff's Office to determine the shooting was not justified and to file criminal charges against Dieterle. The trial took a break starting Tuesday when 3 jurors received a positive diagnosis for COVID-19. Stay with the Law and Crime Daily for the latest developments when court reconvenes. Coming up on Law and Crime Daily, the Uvalde school shooting. Why Texas officials say the emergency response was an abject failure. Plus, famed women's rights attorney Gloria Allred gives her take on the Bill Cosby verdict. Welcome back. A verdict is in as a California jury finds disgraced actor Bill Cosby liable in a civil case surrounding nearly 50-year-old sexual assault allegations. The lawsuit brought by now 64-year-old Judy Huth claimed the embattled comedian sexually assaulted her at the Playboy mansion in the 1970s when she was just 16 years old. Huth claimed she met Cosby at a park where he was filming a movie. She says he later invited them to the Playboy mansion where he molested her. It's the first civil case to make it to trial since Cosby was released a year ago after his criminal conviction for a sexual assault alleged by a different woman was overturned. The jury began deliberations on Thursday and reportedly had decided on most of the verdicts by Friday afternoon. One juror was dismissed for a prior commitment, so the remaining panel was forced to start deliberations over again. Late Tuesday afternoon, jurors awarded Huth $500,000 in damages, but no punitive damages were awarded. Cosby was not present for the trial or the verdict. His attorneys say they plan to appeal. Law and Crime spoke with Gloria Allred, who has represented more than 30 Cosby accusers, including Judy Huth.
I am so happy that the jury understood what the truth was that we were working to prove, and believed that our client Judy Huth was the victim of child sexual abuse by Bill Cosby when she was 16 years old at the Playboy mansion. This happened in 1975. So this case is the first case to go to trial under the new Child Victims Act in California, which allows adult survivors of child sexual abuse to sue their perpetrators, those they accuse, even many decades later. So this is justice for an important victim, Judy Huth, and it's an inspiration to so many others throughout the world. This is a great victory, not only for our client, but for other persons who allege they are victims of child sexual abuse.
Now, Terri, Bill Cosby has won on appeal in the past. Do you think he could go 2 for 2 on this civil case?
You know what, Brian, anything is possible, and it depends on whether or not there are grounds for appeal here. I don't think that there are. We have heard that the attorney spokesperson for Bill Cosby has said they're going to appeal. Apparently, they spoke to a couple of jurors who said that they voted in favor of Bill Cosby. But here, this is a civil trial. He won his appeal in that other criminal trial. Here, there only needs to be a majority, not a unanimous verdict. So I don't think there are any grounds here. The jurors are allowed to have different opinions as long as the majority votes one way.
Yeah. Now, Karen, what's next? Now that Bill Cosby was found liable, criminal charges, collecting damages, how does that work?
Well, of course, as his team has indicated, they're going to file an appeal. But the act that Gloria Allred referred to, and I'm in California, the California Child Victims Act, is in place until December 31st of this year. So I believe it's going to open the floodgates. She's already indicated, Ms. Allred, that there are other victims waiting to move forward. So I think that the victory in this case, being the very first case that has used this statute to their benefit, I think that there are many other victims that are going to come forward that she'll probably represent. And I think that he's going to have many more lawsuits on his hands.
All right, yeah, I would expect the same as well based on the allegations against him. Also in celebrity news, the father of Britney Spears now requests the pop star be deposed, alleging his daughter made inaccurate claims of abuse during her conservatorship. Spears was notably released from her conservatorship last year after spending more than a decade with her father, Jamie Spears, acting as conservator with control over her finances and medical decisions. The conservatorship was established in 2008 when Britney Spears was placed in a psychiatric hold for mental health concerns. During the conservatorship, the pop star alleges her father was abusive by wiretapping her bedroom and forcing her to be put on contraception. Now, Jamie Spears hopes to legally challenge his daughter's claims of abuse by requiring the singer to answer questions under oath. This comes as Britney Spears continues to post about the conservatorship on her social media and announced plans to write a memoir about her time under the conservatorship. When we come back, did first responders react appropriately to the Uvalde school shooting? Why Texas officials say those first to the scene should have done more. Welcome back to Law&Crime Daily. New details now emerging about the Robb Elementary School shooting in Uvalde, Texas, as state officials meet following the incident. Nearly a month ago, an 18-year-old man broke into Robb Elementary School with a gun and killed 19 students and 2 teachers. While in the school for over an hour, the shooter fired more than 100 rounds. Much of the attention after the fact has been focused on the response of local law enforcement and the decisions made by the school district's police chief. The latest details revealed by the director of the Texas Department of Public Safety, an admission that a door to the classroom where the school shooter was held up was actually unlocked while police searched for a key to get in. He suggested that day the lives of police officers were more valued than the children inside the classroom as gunfire tore through the school. Senators on both sides of the aisle shared powerful messages at the Texas State Committee hearing this week.
There are so many issues, but at the heart of it, it's a societal issue. We need help from moms and dad being involved in their children's lives.
I hope that all of us can pray to the Lord for inspiration, that we do and we say and we make the right recommendations, that we all keep an open mind and listen to all the solutions offered, because we have to take action. Thoughts and prayers are wonderful and important, but they are not enough. And actions speak louder than words. And we must take action. We must make a difference.
I'm also a believer of faith and understand that the next shooter's already walking the streets. He's already out there. She's already out there. Whoever that is, it's already there. It's the world I live in, on this side of heaven, so to speak. My job is to thwart the success of the next attempt to the best of our abilities.
Wednesday afternoon, it was decided that the Robb County Elementary School, where the shooting happened, will be torn down. Karen, according to what we know so far, the police could have stopped the shooting 3 minutes after the gunman entered the school. How will that affect the mounting civil suits?
Well, I think that there's a lot of fingers to point in this particular case, and we're talking about a really tiny area, and they just don't have the funds. We have the police response issue, we have gun safety, and we have school security. And so all those issues come into play, and we don't want to bankrupt this little town. So I think that that's going to be a soul-searching issue, and how can we resolve the issues as was just indicated in this clip without bankrupting this little town.
Absolutely. Now, Terri, what happens to a police department when their actions are called, quote, an abject failure and so many lives are lost?
Well, you heard there in that press conference that everyone is very upset. The mayor is talking about demolishing the school, as you mentioned. We could see terminations, particularly of the chief, Arredondo. There will be an internal review, no doubt about it. We're going to look at policies and training. And we might even see that the Department of Justice will come in and look at whether or not there are issues that are prevalent in that police department and whether or not they need to change all of their policies. So we'll see what happens, Brian, but lots of things need to be done.
Yeah, the focus is right now on the police, but our hearts and minds also go out to those victims. Thank you for those joining us here on Law&Crime Daily. We'll see you next time as we discuss justice in America.